Next subject.
Get out.
Oh man, what the hell is your problem, buddy?
Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. All right? Uh-oh, Richard. Oh, wow. Wow. Will Smith just smacked the shit out of it. Wow, dude.
Yes.
It was a G.I. Jane jump.
Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth.
I'm going to, okay? That was a greatest night in the history of television. Okay.
The slap that reverberated around the news globe. Was it a retaliation for a bad joke? Was it a hoax to instigate more viewership for the failing Oscars? Or finally, was it a magical operation inspired and promoted by the dark Hollywood occult? That the stunt was actually a magical operation, a ritual of sorts that was instigated by the Hollywood elite in order to produce not only a reaction around the globe, but also produce a desired result by using the magical operation and ritual of the magician. Magicians are scientists. They use an electromagnetic wave in order to produce desired results. So if you can influence the magnetic force in the electromagnetic wave, then you can produce certain results. And this is what these elite magical operations are all about. They are now called predictive programming because so many of these magical operations are done in advance of the actual event. So I have two interests in this. One, to discover what the meaning behind some of these strange rituals are, but number two, perhaps using them as a weather vane of what will be coming in the future, and maybe using it to our advantage for once, because the elite are communicating to each other in their own special coded words and magical rituals, certain events they are trying to produce in the future. So what does this slap of Will Smith on Chris Rock and invoking G.I. Jane mean? So let's start with the classic definition of magic. Magic is the science of influencing nature's magnetic force to produce the will of the magician. Let me repeat that. Magic is the science of influencing nature's magnetic force to produce the will of the magician. I will give you several examples. 1. David and the slingshot killing Goliath. Yes, David, the magician, used the centrifugal magnetic force to kill Goliath. 2. The surfer, using the magnetic force. Yes, using the magnetic force of a wave to propel the surfer is also a form of magic because it uses the magnetic force to produce the surfer's will, which is to skim and travel at great speed across the surface of the wave. And 3, yes, the rain dance, which Native Americans use to produce rain. Come now, that's simply superstition. Native American rain dances can't possibly produce rain. Well, you're wrong. The Native American rain dances produce the electric charge necessary to produce overhead cloud formation and the magnetic force of water to accumulate. It is simple science.
Cloud is negative. The negative charge in the cloud makes some spots on the ground get a positive charge. And when the charge is in the cloud and the charges on the ground are just right, a bolt of lightning jumps between the cloud and the earth. And meteorologists have discovered that there are different kinds of lightning too. Some lightning goes from one part of a cloud to another. Some jumps from cloud to cloud, and some goes between the sky and the ground. But it's all caused by a moving electrical charge.
Yes, the magic of the dancing Native Americans causing a positively charged electrical charge on the earth causes the negative charge in the cloud to produce lightning and releasing its rain. So the pounding of the dancing feet of the Native Americans are pounding up electrical charges in the earth's surface, causing the electromagnetic water in the cloud to be drawn to it and burst down and produce rain. On about the ancient magic that we believe are superstitions, but were based on electromagnetic principles, such as dowsing rods or witching rods used by the dowser to find water. That is using Ohm's law of magnetic induction. The rods are sensitized to the water electrons in the surface water and produces a subtle quivering of the dowser's rods. Dowsers are used in California to find well water and hidden pipes, even today. So it's not superstition despite all the illiteracy of our modern day educations. Another ancient form of magic is reading the tea leaves. Putting tea leaves on the surface of water in tea and watch how they accumulate and swirl gives the clairvoyant or the prophet information about where a storm lies off 10 miles offshore. Reading the tea leaves is an ancient form of a barometer that the magicians used in ancient Egypt and ancient China. And we can call another form of using the electromagnetic wave is Osiris obelisk, or the obelisk found in Egypt and Tapaki Square in Istanbul. These huge poles of granite reaching up into the clouds produce an electrical charge that draws the magnetic charges of water, brings it down into the earth and underneath into caverns, which produces well water, or the large cavernous cisterns you see underneath the main square, Tapaki Square in Istanbul today, and were used by the ancient Romans and Greeks and Egyptians to produce water for the city. That's the science or the magic behind the rain dance. Well, a slap usually wakes something up, like a zombie or a sleeping giant. A slap will cause the electrons within the body to start hitting and circulating. So what did Will's slap used against Chris Rock produce? And what was the reference to G.I. Jane all about? These are some questions I would like to know, so let's investigate. This is not the first time that Chris Rock has been slapped in a theatrical production. In a 2001 animated film about a deadly virus called Osmosis Jones, Chris Rock plays a white blood cell who is constantly getting slapped throughout the film. It appears that Chris Rock, a white blood cell or leukocyte, is unable to battle a virulent virus, very much like that corona cold flu that we're dealing with today. And this is a film made 21 years ago. And it's a slap heard across the decades with the voice of Chris Rock telling the world about the future, perhaps. In Osmosis Jones, Chris Rock's character plays a white blood cell, or leukocyte, which obviously is having trouble battling a new virus that invades the brain, changes the DNA, and turns the person into a zombie. Well, Chris Rock needs to wake up the sleeping giant whose brain has just been infected by this deadly DNA mRNA virus. Oh my goodness, how appropriate for what we're doing today with the injection. Now, in order to find the hidden virus, Chris Rock, playing a leukocyte or white blood cell, goes undercover as a hydra. A hydrid, yes. A Hydra vulgaris. Where have we heard that before? Well, the alternative media said that within these COVID-19 vaccines were these parasites, or Hydra vulgaris. And of course, Snopes comes out and says it's all a hoax. There are no such Hydra vulgaris in the COVID vaccines. But how? Coincidental? Not.
Snot crust, I was just surfing.
I was sent into this body to make it feel better, so if this alleged virus has anything to do with that mission, I must pursue it.
Yeah, whatever. Yes, chill, he's a flu shot. Great.
So it was decided to find the hidden virus by using a flu shot. But this isn't any old flu shot. It's an mRNA vaccine that changes the mRNA, or the DNA, of the virus, invades the brain. And where in the brain does it invade? Well, the virus is destroying the hypothalamus. Yes, the mRNA DNA culprit is penetrating deep into the brain and destroying the hypothalamus.
Now, this little sucker comes from a place called the hypothalamus gland. My plan is simple. 3 teams will move through the cranial artery and 1 through the nasal passage. We are going to the brain, baby. We are going to march right in there, and we are going to take the prize. Hypothalamus. Hypothalamus controls the temperature for the entire body.
So the evil villain Thrax goes into the brain, and on the DNA strand starts to attack the hypothalamus.
We are going to march right in there, and we are going to take the prize. Hypothalamus. Hypothalamus controls the temperature for the entire body.
If you think this is coincidental, well, all I can say is you need to practice on pattern recognition. I know that all the theorists want you to destroy your ability to recognize patterns, but you can't recognize science or nature or natural law without recognizing patterns, such as the sun comes up in the morning and the moon comes up at night. That's a pattern, and it happens day in and day out and day in and day out. But if you destroy certain parts of the brain, like the hypothalamus, you cannot recognize patterns, and you live in the constant presence, and you become, yes, a zombie, just as the CDC's website has been warning about the zombie apocalypse, because this new vaccine is destroying the hypothalamus. And I'm going to tell you what the hypothalamus is all about. It controls your endocrine system. It controls all the hormonal and the pineal and the functions of the body, the autonomic functions, so that you live in a constant present state. You have no frontal lobe activity. It doesn't connect to the vagus nerve, comes up and hits the hypothalamus, but then it's cut off. And all your body functions are discombobulated. This is what this new vaccine purportedly we're being warned about in this cartoon, if you want to believe that any of it is a forewarning at all. Okay, this is just a refresher on G.I. Jane. G.I. Jane is a 1997 war drama film produced by Ridley Scott, a very connected individual, Ridley Scott. There he is. Then the slap. Then Chris Rock pronounces Will Smith as the greatest knight in television, and that means not the evening of the night, but the valiant knight, the knight that serves milady. Okay, this is just a refresher on G.I. Jane. G.I. Jane is a 1997 war drama film produced by Ridley Scott, a very connected individual, Ridley Scott. There he is. Remember, his brother was assassinated or jumped from the Long Beach Bridge in some kind of ritual. Anyway, so Ridley Scott's still around, starring Demi Moore and others. Plot is that Demi Moore has been chosen by the Navy SEALs to be the first woman to compete as a Navy SEAL. Position of Secretary of Navy Senator Lillian DeHaven from Texas criticizes the Navy for not being gender neutral. Behind the curtains, a deal is struck. If women compare favorably with men in a series of test cases, the military will integrate women fully into the occupations of the Navy. Okay, to make the grade, O'Neill must survive a grueling selection program in which almost 60% of the candidates wash out. Of course, she doesn't. The media learns that O'Neill's involvement, that she has become a sensation, known as G.I. Jane and Joan of Arc. That's very important. Joan of Arc, who led the French to victory, is considered a heroine of France for her role during the Lancastrian phase of the 100 Years' War. She was convicted and burnt at the stake as a heretic. Her conviction was later removed. She must contend with trumped-up charges that she is a lesbian and has been fraternizing with women. However, she is saved by the bell. It is later revealed that the photo evidence of O'Neill's fraternization with other women had come from Senator DeHaven's office, a treachery. As you recall, Senator DeHaven was the woman that challenged the Navy SEALs to introduce women. Is interrupted by an emergency that requires CRT training support. The situation involves reconnaissance of a satellite-powered weapon, grade plutonium, that fell into the Libyan desert. A team of U.S. Army Rangers is dispatched to retrieve the plutonium, but their evacuation plan fails, much like the Jimmy Carter evacuation failed. It goes on. She and McCool pull out of the explosive-laden kill zone with a helicopter gunships, delivering the final assault to the defenders, and rescuing the mission is a success. So she and McCool rescue the rest of the Navy SEALs. Okay, so this, if you don't understand, is just laden with, quote-unquote, the predatory bloodline magical codes. We're going to see it in the names. Now, the bloodline families always want to go back to their roots in Babylon. So everything is constantly referring to Israel, the Middle East, being the chosen people, being from Babylon, yes, the Talmud, etc. Now, I'm not saying this is Jewish. I'm saying it's Babylonian, and it goes back to Romans. Okay, Romans adopted the Babylonian religion out of Persia. It's all Middle Eastern. So Roman Catholicism is actually Persian Babylonianism, or we can call it Middle Eastern Sufism. And it's the magical form of Babylonian magic. So Demi Moore, what is her name? Of course, the River Jordan. What does the River Jordan do? It flows through the Middle East. And it is the land of the milk and honey in which Christ traveled. Okay, then the Master Chief is called John James of the Bible. Yes, Urgale, John and James of Ur. Ur is a Sumerian city, and it was known as and they worship the Queen Nana. Okay, so Ur right there. So we have Jordan, who is a female. We have Ur, which is a Nana, And then Bancroft plays, yes, Lilith, Lillian of Heaven, Lilith of Heaven. Now, if you don't know who Lilith is, she's a demonic female that first mated with Adam, and she would not submit to Adam, and therefore she took off with her lover, who is the U.S., or Uncle Samael, who is a fallen angel. So Lilith and Samael become a couple, and they produce this bloodline of the predatory class, which they like to call themselves illuminated, but they're really, I guess you have to illuminate yourself in the dark magic arts. But here's Lillian de Heaven, and look, Jerusalem, here's Captain Salem. So we've got Jerusalem, we have the Babylonian, Eden comes out of Babylon, comes down into Jerusalem. And so this is the battle of the female. Okay, Jordan is Eve, who then becomes as fierce as Lilith, the demonic side of the Queen of Heaven. So this is the initiation of G.I. Jane, Demi Moore, into the full power of the Lilith group of demonic females. So when G.I. Jane is referenced as Will Smith's wife, is it the initiation of Will Smith, who is the greatest knight? What does a knight do? A knight serves the great lady or the queen. Okay, so Will is the greatest knight in television, and who is his wife? She is the queen. All right, so it was initiation of the queen, and the slap heard around the globe is really just an initiation ritual, but it also includes COVID. So is Will Smith's wife, Jada, the queen of death, the queen of the COVID, the queen of the COVIDians, the COVID cult? We're going to find out. So is Jada the new queen of the zombie apocalypse? The new queen of the destruction of the hypothalamus that makes people human? The new queen of a deadly virus that turns people into zombies? And Will Smith, the greatest knight in Hollywood history, the greatest knight in television history, is simply serving Jada Pinkett Smith, the Queen Inanna, the Queen of Death, the Queen of the COVIDians, the Queen of the Zombies, the Queen of destroying everything that is human about the female side of the human race, which is empathy. If you destroy the hypothalamus, you destroy even the female's ability to have empathy, even for their own offspring. This is the final blow by the final apocalypse of the zombies. But let's get back to the original purpose of this theatrical play. It was a magical operation. And as a magical operation, it is supposed to manipulate or harness the magnetic force to produce the magician's will. So what does this magical operation have to do with inaugurating or implementing that great magician in the sky's will? Well, we have Will Smith. That's part named after the will, which Alistair Crowley states that the will is above love. The will is everything, Nietzsche's will to power. And we have Will Smith implementing the Masonic Smith. As you know, the 4 offspring of Tubal Cain, one was a smith, a metal worker. So Will Smith, the knight of the Queen Inanna, or the Queen of the Zombies, is implementing the will of the magicians. But what will is it? Well, the obvious is to bring in the zombies. I don't know. I don't know how we're going to use this to make any money, but never let a good crisis go to waste. Always invest. which is the final word of the Wolf of Wall Street. Probably the biggest magician of all, the Wolf of Wall Street. And that's for another video. The end.